So today we are working on the Little Green Ripper, my regular cab short bed Silverado that we are building out into a turbo LS street truck. All the creature comforts, but with some power, hopefully a lot of power. So if you missed the last episode, we went ahead and got the engine stripped down to a bare block. We got it cleaned up. We did a at-home job, get some fresh cross hatching in the cylinders. We threw in some Texas Speed forged rods and pistons. This is their drop-in 6-liter piston and rod combo. We got all of that done, all the rings gapped, bearings checked, etc., etc. So the rotating assembly minus the cam is complete. Now it's time to build out the rest of the engine. I want to get this thing finished up from oil pan to intake manifold, exhaust manifold, turbo manifold, everything on, and have this thing ready to drop back in the truck. So we've got the parts to do it. We just got to get to it. That rhymed. All right, I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering and we're gonna get to work. Let's toss the cam in first. This is the worst part of a cam install. Oh man, we forgot to install our water pump bolts. We need those. So, you take the water pump bolts from your water pump. Gives you a nice handle to hold on to once you get to the end of putting the cam in. Easy peasy. I gotta clean all this off my hands. Alright, I've got a new camshaft retainer plate. I always replace these if I pull the cam out just because this seal on the old ones will become completely flat, and this is an oil passage, so this holds internal oil pressure. It's not keeping oil from leaking out, it's keeping oil under pressure. So if that seal goes bad, you can have low oil pressure, which obviously nobody wants low oil pressure. We got a new timing chain to go on here, just for kicks. I don't often replace them, but one of those things. And just like that, our LS is timed. It's like gotta be the easiest engine in the world to put a timing chain on in time. Cylinder 1, top dead center, line up 2 dots. I mean, no tensioner or anything, you just put the chain on, boom, put it on. Alright, cool, cam's done. Since I'm sure people will wonder, I always forget when someone asks. Cam specs, there we go. Also, I'll make the parts list available, so you should be able to just call Texas Speed and order, you know, exactly what I've got. I'll let them know that it's okay, because obviously they won't give out what a customer ordered unless you tell them to, because for obvious reasons. So yeah, I'll let them know. And same with the Miata 6.2 setup, if anyone needs that info. Alright, next up, lifters. So we've got some Johnson race lifters, and then just some new OEM trays. These trays can, over time, get brittle and break, and the tray is what's holding the lifter and the roller the correct orientation, so if it does break and the lifter spins, it's bad news bear. So I like to replace them. And these are the same lifters that I run in the Miata, bouncing off limiter for years on end now. So alright, well, the block surface is cleaned, so it's time for really the crown jewel of this engine. The PRC Stage 2.5 CNC ported cylinder heads. These things are sweet. I have never actually had CNC ported heads, or really any aftermarket head for an LS. I've always just, you know, ran the good stock casting heads and done valve springs myself, or had the machine shop clean them up and deck them or whatever. Just pretty basic stuff. So I'm pretty hyped for my my first set of CNC ported heads. So we got those to go on. We've got ARP head bolts, and then we've got some factory GM head gaskets. These are factory multi-layer steel. They work great. I've ran these in literally every LS. If you can use OEM parts, it's the move most of the time. That's what we got to go on next. I'm getting hyped to see this thing fully buttoned up. It's gonna be a snazzy little unit. So I need to quit jibber jabbering about it, and we need to get back to work. Let's get these heads on. Woo-hoo. Oh man, this is exciting.
I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend.
Whew. One head down, one to go. All right, heads are on, fully torqued down. Oh, what a nice sight. It would be nice if the block was fresh and brand new looking too, but hey, you can't win them all. We got some fancy parts. So what we need to do next is go ahead and get the oil pump on. So we got a high pressure pump. I think it's 10295 is the part number, 10295. Yeah, 10295, I got it right. So this is a high pressure standard volume. You do not want a high volume oil pump, because what it can do is suck your pan dry at high RPM. It's flowing so much volume that all the oil is elsewhere in the motor in the top end, and it can't drain back fast enough. People have blown up their motors because of this. So definitely high pressure, not high volume. We need to get this thing on. We got to do some shimming and measuring to make sure that we get it centered, but other than that, pretty standard operation. I gotta check that with some feeler gauges, but it looks about right. Alright, so for the front cover, we have a brand new GM one. So these come with bolts, gasket, and a new main seal. I always tell myself, no, I'm just gonna use the gasket kit, which I have one that I got from Texas Speed. But it's really not that much more to do the whole cover. It's hard to resist getting a brand new one. So with the LS's, the timing cover is centered by the crank pulley. So it's not doweled or anything. It can move around a ton on the bolts. So basically you've got to put it on loosely, put the crank pulley on, and then tighten it down. Otherwise, you know, it might be offset to the crank pulley and you'll have massive front main seal leaks, which nobody wants that. All right, moving on. We got a tedious step ahead that I want to go ahead and get done so we can kind of seal this thing up. All right, so the next step is going to be a Trunnion upgrade. So here are stock LS rocker arms. So these have basically loose needles inside this cap, and then the cap is just pressed in. So the only thing holding this cap in is the friction of the cap in the press fit. So what we're going to do is replace that. I have this one from Texas Speed. I've used all different types. This is a needle bearing type. We've got these much beefier bearings, much beefier center, better bolts, and then the biggest thing here, where are they, is that there's going to be C-clips that are going to go on the outside to keep this bearing cap from falling out. Because what can happen at high RPM is these caps can fall out. One, it toasts your rocker arm. Two, little needle bearings go off through your engine. So I do this to all the LS motors that I do. It's just cheap insurance. It's not that expensive. It is a little time consuming though. You can see these are all the little needle bearings, and they just go everywhere. So, junk, empty rocker. Got to do this 16 more times. All right, we've got all of our rocker arms done with our trunnion upgrade. Get these in the engine, and then we can just keep on trucking. Before we put the rocker arms back on, we need to put our new push rods in. So these are Texas Speed hardened push rods. We have 2 pairs of poly valve covers. I can't decide which color I want to use. So we have black. This is what I have on the Miata. Then we have this really nice red. I love red valve covers. Looks all racy, but it's currently a green truck. So kind of not the best truck to have red valve covers. Man, I don't know. This is tough. I want to do the red. It's not a Christmas themed truck, so it makes it a little, you know what? We're going to do the red. I like red. We're going to put the red ones on. If it looks bad, we'll swap the black ones in. I really like these Holley valve covers because, one, they come with really nice hardware. Come with a nice oil cap, but they've got a built-in baffle here. So you can run the OEM style PCV setup with 3/8 hose. What I do is I usually loop it and then put one fitting on one side, depending on how much crankcase ventilation I really need. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do with this truck, but like an NA application, these 2 ports baffled is perfect. Just might not be enough for how much power we're going to be pushing through this thing. Man, that looks snazzy. And I might have to put these on the Miata and put the black ones on this. These will get on the Miata. All right, valve covers are on, front cover is on, and rear cover is on. So she's about all sealed up. With those covers on, we can now put the oil pan on, but before we can put the oil pan on, we need to put a provision to drain our turbo into. Our turbo oil's got to go back to the pan. So we have this 10 ORB port to weld into here, and then we'll have a 10 AN fitting that'll screw into that. This is most likely going to be very tricky. So cast aluminum, as some of you know, it's tricky to weld. I've had pretty decent luck with it. It hasn't been as bad as people made it out to be. But this is very dirty cast aluminum and oily cast aluminum. So we got our work cut out for us trying to weld this fitting in. welded worse than I thought, but came out better than I expected. So the problem with welding something cast like this is cast aluminum is porous. So it's had oil in here for 20 years, you know, soaking into those pores. So even though I cleaned this thoroughly and wiped it with acetone and ground down a layer, it's once I start welding, it's pulling that oil and dirt and grime out of those pores and into the weld. So not the most fun thing, but I would assume that'll seal all right. So sweet, oil pan done. Just gotta clean it up and then we can toss it on. All right, before we put the pickup tube in, I'm gonna fill up the oil pump with some gear oil. The gear oil is thicker than, you know, regular oil, and it'll help sit a little bit better than if we tried to use just regular oil. There we go. I still don't fully understand why the pump is designed to have 2 bolts and GM only uses 1. Alright, now we're ready to throw the pan on, but before we throw the pan on, I want to go ahead and get the crank pulley on. That way it centers the cover before we put the pan on, because we kind of want to level this out, this here, because the pan's going to bolt to the cover. So that way we don't skew the cover with the pan first, if that makes any sense. All right, time for a very controversial maneuver. What we're going to do is torch this hub to expand it, boom, pop it on the crank. The crank is cold, it'll shrink, boom, onto the crank. It's a press-on deal. There is a special tool for it, but it relies on the threads. This is a nice way to do it. People freaked out the first time I did this, but I've done it on every LS motor. Never had a problem. You guys over here, you don't get in my way. So yeah, we don't torch it long. We just heat it up a little bit to expand it some. Beautiful. I think we're not fully all the way. So let's zip it in the rest of the way, the old bolt. Easy peasy. My favorite comment I got the first time I did it like this on video was someone was like, "The seal's gonna melt right out of your motor. The seals melt at 200 degrees. That sounds good in a comment, right? This guy knows what he's talking about. Your engine runs at like 200 degrees, 220, 230. Tell me a seal's gonna melt at 200? Does that mean all the seals melt when the engine gets to operating temperature? It's news to me. That's just funny. Some people are so sure of themselves. That thing's not gonna go 5 miles without pouring oil everywhere. What do you know, 2 years later, totally fine. Never leaked a drop. All right. Front cover's on, rear cover is bolted down. Now we can put the pan on. Simple enough. So one of the things I love about LS's is that they are a very minimal RTV engine. They don't have freaking 100 RTV gaskets. RTV gaskets work. They do. They work. But I hate them. I hate dealing with it. But since these covers meet here at the block, we want to RTV this little gap just because it's not going to perfectly seal there. So we'll put some silicone there, but other than that, we're about ready to go. So we're going to use this stuff. It's called Hylomar Blue. So it's a really interesting deal. It comes out like real wet. It's got some sort of solvent in it, and it doesn't set. So it doesn't stick on there like normal RTV does. I used it on the diff cover on the Miata, and it seemed to work just fine. So we don't need much. Might not be the best for this scenario, but we'll give it a shot. Don't know till you try. I'm an idiot. Put this on the wrong side. I'm so used to front sump pans, I forget that this is a rear sump. In my head, this was the passenger side because it'd be front sump. As I'm putting it on, I'm remembering that it's rear sump. Yeah, we're gonna have to abort mission on this. Luckily, I have some weld-on fittings, so we'll plug that. And then if we ever go twin turbo, we'll have a drain on both sides, you know? There's no way I'm gonna run a drain. Drains are important. Drains have gotta go straight. Alright, well, I'm gonna correct my mistake. Then we'll get the pan on so we can get the intake manifold on, so we can get the exhaust manifolds on, get the turbo on the exhaust manifolds, and have this thing ready to drop in. Tisk tisk. Alright, got our new fitting welded on. It was a little cleaner up here, presumably because it wasn't so deep in the oil level like this one was. I went ahead and put the adapter fitting I have to 10AN and a cap on it. I'll probably try to find just a plug. But either way, we got it capped off. I went ahead and threw a cap on this one, just that way while we're building out the engine, we don't have a hole in the oil pan for junk to fall in and down into the oil pan. So yeah, anyway, oil pan is actually done now. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this rail. I forgot to do that, and then we'll toss it on. Do some more intake cleaning, but I just want to get it on and kind of close the hole up. So I wanted to get a Holley high ram for this, but I want to keep cruise control and all that stuff for now, which has like a dual guide on the throttle body and the low end torque and like all the stock features. So for now we're running the stock truck intake. Man, I gotta clean this thing off some more. Just put it on loosely for now, just to close the ports up so nothing falls down in there. We've also got to pull the fuel rails off anyway, change the injectors, so this is temporary. Yeah, man, I hate putting this ugly intake on here. It bothers me. My kind of game plan with this build, at the moment, I built the motor to be able to handle going a little wild. Because if I want to do that, hopefully I don't have to pull the motor back out and build it for that. But for now, the goal is, 700-800 horsepower street truck, AC, cruise control, all the modern, comfortable features, and just see what I use it for. Like, am I gonna just go do burnouts in it and start taking it to the drag strip and do pulls and whatever, or am I going to drive it around as like a daily driver a ton? What I end up using it for is really going to dictate the direction for V2, which I'm basically already planning there will be a V2, i.e. bigger turbo, stuff like that. So I just kind of want to see how it pans out. If I'm like, screw the street truck, we can just make it rowdy, then I can do like a Holley intake with the air-to-water intercooler and piping and a giant turbo and whatever. But if I want to keep it street truck, maybe I'll go with the upgraded truck intake manifold, and there's different directions. But I've got to see what I'm going to actually use the truck for. In my mind, I'm going to drive it around like every day. But will I? I don't know. So I want to find that out before we go too crazy. Bench building, You don't really know what you're going to use something for and what you're going to like and don't like and need and not need till you do it. So yeah, intake manifolds on enough to close up the ports. Let's get the pretty stuff on, the exhaust manifolds. All right, now for what we've all been waiting for, the items to make the boost and the boost noises and the spoolies and all the things, right? So what's this whole build centered around? The turbo stuff. So this is a Faller Speed Performance log manifold. I love this design. Super well thought out. He started building them like really nice TIG welded stainless log manifolds, but then he took the design and had it built cast. And I mean, for me, especially a log style manifold, you just can't beat a cast manifold. One, the durability of it. Two, the look. I mean, it just looks like an OEM piece. It was a pretty tough decision because this TIG welded one looks super nice too, and it's just kind of, but I went with the cast manifold. We're going to have a cast hooker on the other side that's going to feed over into this, boom, up to the turbo. We've got our wastegate ports, so we'll just have to drill one of these out when we decide where we want to put our wastegate. We can put it on a tube, so on and so forth. We'll figure that out when it's in the truck, but that's the manifold. And then here is the turbo. So this is a VS Racing next gen 78, 75, second gen, gen 2. There's a lot of them. It's a 78, 75 with a billet wheel. So these turbos are really sweet because they're super affordable and they make great power. And they've proven to be really reliable So I'm pretty excited to see this. This is my first time taking it out of the package. Exducer wheel, we got 4-inch downpipe, T4 flange. It's funny because this is honestly a relatively small turbo for this engine. This will be really good for our current power goals, 700, 800. We can make 900 on it, but if we start pushing past that and try to get into the 4-digit numbers, we are going to have to go with a bigger turbo. But for now, this one will be super responsive, super rowdy, good packaging, so on and so forth. Probably light off at like 2,500 RPM, maybe even less than that with a 6-liter. But I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering about it. I'm just excited. This is my first time taking all this stuff out of the packages, and whew, some nice pieces, man. And super affordable too. Like this isn't fancy, crazy, like expensive stuff. This is actually like really affordable stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the manifold on the engine, then we can get the turbo on the manifold and take a look at the whole combo. Well, I had to pull the intake off to get a good look at the whole combo without that freaking stock truck intake uglying it up. Oh, it just kills. It kills everything we got going on here. But man, I'm stoked on this combo. I cannot wait to get this thing in the truck. That being said, we're pretty much wrapped up with the engine build. There's really not anything else to do besides put the accessories on and put it in the truck. One thing we are waiting on still is transit converter, but we can put the engine in the truck and start doing everything else. Now, obviously, we got some work to do before we can put the engine in the truck because it's a little messy in here. 20 years of road grime and oil and lots of stuff. So I'm gonna get this cleaned up. We got to do the Holley Terminator integration into the stock chassis harness so we can kind of let the stock ECU think it's running the show and have cruise control and all of those functions easily, and run the engine actually off the Terminator, because I can't go back to running off a stock ECU after living the Terminator life. It's so much easier. So we got that to do. We got a Pro Dash for it. We got some more odds and ends, but we're cruising right along, and it shouldn't be long till we're doing burnouts with this thing, barring any major complications. And, you know, we got trips, and I got to fix the Miata, and there's all these other stuff to do, but the engine's ready to go back in, which is one of the biggest hurdles. So I'm stoked to stick this slug in there, start doing freaking burnouts and hearing turbo noises and all the little bits of fab work, and it's going to be so much fun. But for now, that's going to be a wrap, unfortunately. I wish we could keep going, but we're kind of out of parts and time. So that's going to be it for this one. I hope to see you guys next time. But for now, that's it. Why do I always do that? Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye.